Hello.
Hello.
You're early. Good evening. How are you?
Oh, good here.
A lot of people on. Good evening, everyone.
Alexa, stop. I muted.
Alexa governs our life to remind us we have a meeting tonight. What?
Your background?
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
No. Yes. Good evening, people. Hi, Terry. I'm getting a hum from somewhere.
Hey, John, somebody's feeding back, and so I recommend you mute everyone and then unmute people one by one.
You got it.
And meanwhile, I'll mute myself because I'm sure I wasn't doing it.
Oh, I don't know. It stopped. No. For all I know, it could be me.
Steve Mason, I have a question for you. I am rewriting my will, and I want to leave my Sherlock Holmes books to the Beacon Society if my grandchildren don't want them, and I don't know that they will. So what do I say in the will? Is it just Beacon Society?
You're muted.
Sorry, you're muted.
When are you actually planning on dying? Because that might have an effect on it. I mean, are we talking like in the next week or so, or
No.
Oh, no, I still have probably a good 15, 20, 25 years left.
Right. I would just simply say the Beacon Society, and yeah, once we received them, then we can determine what to do with them.
Okay. Thanks.
And I guess the question would be, and I hate to ask it this way, are there a lot of valuable books, or is it,
No, not a lot of valuable books, mostly pastiches, a lot of pastiches and a lot of complete works, good to give away.
Well, because what I was going to say is we're going to kick off pretty soon those library displays, so we can always use books to put into the library displays to send out to societies. And so if there are a lot of trade paperbacks and stuff, those would be perfect, so.
Would you want them now? I mean, we've got duplicates. Let me, we're
I would love, if they're like paperbacks. I mean, I will tell you the really heavy stuff, like the anthologies and stuff, are a little harder to ship around. But if you've got paperbacks of pastiches, or even the canon itself, we would love to have
right there.
No,
They're right there. I understand, but we've got.
Where do we send them to?
To me. I'll put my name I'll send you my
I'll
address.
send you an email.
Yeah.
We'll pack them up and send them to you.
Thanks, guys.
Don, I have made you a co-host, and Robert, I've made you a co-host.
I appreciate that, although I have no idea what that means.
I understand, but I just figured you'd like the.
I appreciate the honor. It's like the man who was tarred and feathered and being run out of town. If it wasn't for the honor of the thing, I just as soon walk.
We have 64 registrants. Now, I'm sure that means that we won't have 64 attendees, but if we do,
I registered 4 times.
it can only count you once. And you did register 4 times. I'd like to ask the attendees if anyone has been a part of a live meeting and not a Zoom meeting of a Sherlockian Society as of yet.
Yes, I have.
Okay, where was that? Was that in Indianapolis?
It was in Indianapolis, the illustrious clients. Actually, they've had two. I was going to go to both of them, but I couldn't make the first one, which was at some country club. But they had a field trip. We had an air gun competition. And I want you to know that no villain is safe amongst the illustrious clients. There were a lot of good shots there. And it was very nice, and it was well attended. It was outdoors, obviously, and there were, I would say, 40 to 50 people in attendance, and I'm including some children that came. I'm not including the donkey that was present. It was not the Maiwan mule, it was a real donkey that seems to be a pet, and was very much the hero and the belle of the ball, or whatever a donkey is. I'm not sure what a donkey is.
So my question, I guess we'll talk, if you're the only one who's been to a live meeting, we'll talk on another time.
So the crew of the Bark Lone Star, we're going to have our first one on August 1st. So
Are you having any requirement as to vaccinations?
To this point, we really haven't discussed it.
Well, the governor might bar you from doing it, but
I was going to say Texas is kind of in its own unique little league, so I don't know if we will or not. The one good thing that the restaurant that we meet at, they have a very large meeting room that they'll give us for free that we can socially distance quite a bit. I mean, we can set everybody at separate tables, but we will do it combined. We will have a live, but we're also going to do the Zoom. Also, we're going to continue the Zoom meeting.
Right, we're going to also try to do that, because I don't think Diane Gilbert will be. Diane, I don't think you'd be willing to come in for a meeting. You're muted.
I think what the illustrious.
I'd love to, but I can't.
Okay.
But I hope that you could have live plus the Zoom.
Yeah, the illustrious clients are doing the same thing, and they are only allowing Zoom attendees that live more than 100 miles from the meeting.
We're going to be more generous. We're going to say 99.
Okay.
We're hoping to have our next meeting in September at Coletti's with a Zoom component, assuming Coletti's can help us with a large screen and things like that. And again, you and I talk about that.
I'm going to assume that since we have some of our members that have underlying conditions that might be nervous to still get meeting live, we will open up to anybody Zoom wise. So.
Well, there was also that exception too made.
Right.
I don't know how you do that. I mean, I don't even know how I got on this the Zoom cast. I'm glad I made it. But I always think it's a miracle when I show up.
Well, there's a bigger miracle. Sonny, I haven't seen you with a picture on for many meetings. It's good to see you.
Because I went to the computer that has the picture. I usually watch on the one that doesn't have a camera.
Oh, okay. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
You ask where are people coming from besides those of us who are sitting in Evanston, Illinois?
She's leaving. I'm from Niantic, Connecticut on the Long Island Sound.
I grew up in Pound Ridge.
Oh, okay. And I usually attend, I like these Zoom meetings where I can sort of just sit in on all sorts of groups. I usually attend the Priory Scholars in New York City and monthly the Cheshire, Connecticut Sherlock Holmes Society. And they had an in-person meeting this month, but I didn't attend.
I think no question. We want foreign alien members. Those are more than 100 miles away to continue to come. I think Zoom should remain a component of every meeting, but we also want live bodies.
It's a very different experience.
And Alan?
I'm from Tacoma, Washington area. Longtime member of the Sound of the Baskervilles. And very glad to participate today. Nice to see
Good
all
to
these
see you.
faces out there.
Deborah?
Hi, I'm Debbie Clark from Frederick, Maryland, and I usually go to Watson's Tin Box of Ellicott City.
Hi, Elaine Linzenek, and I'm a member of Parallel Case in St. Louis, and I live in Swansea, Illinois.
Drive over the river.
Yes.
Sandy Cozen, Demarest, New Jersey. You did groups in the New York area. And I've been having lots of fun with Zooming groups.
Well, you're welcome to be here. We're happy to have you. Samir? I'm not getting any sound.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I live in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I appreciate the invitation. I'm not sure how you got hold of me. I'm a member of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. Hudson Valley scientists, Lou Lewis and Al Rosenblatt, perhaps they shared my email with you guys, but I accepted and I'm happy to be here.
Last time I was in Poughkeepsie, was Reader's Digest used to be in Poughkeepsie, Sawmill River Parkway.
No, that was Mount Kisco, I think, Mount Kisco.
Oh, okay.
Mount Kisco, Westchester.
Yeah. As I said, I grew up in Pound Ridge.
Very good. Thank you.
Thomas and Janet Vabluski from Toledo, Ohio. And we'd like to say a special hello to Sonny Levine. Hi, Sonny.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good, good. It's good seeing your face. Haven't seen you for a long time.
That's absolutely true. A lot of people here I haven't seen for a long time. Margaret Smedegard, for one.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to see you all.
Hello, Sonny.
Hello, who's talking?
Jack Levitt.
Oh, hi.
There's 31 people already.
Good to see you, Margaret.
Well, I'm Velda, and I just moved to Illinois from Michigan, where I was a member of the Amateur Mendicant Society, and I'm hoping to find a local Illinois chapter soon.
Where are you doing? Illinois is a large state. Where?
I'm in Madison near Frankfort.
Madison.
Yeah,
She's south. The South Downers
suburb.
might be the best bet.
Right.
South Downers. Let me write
The
that
South
down.
Downers. Mhm.
South Downers.
I am.
And there may be a South Downer on later, so.
There's
Cool.
a South Downer on right now. Jack Levitt is on.
Hello.
Greetings.
Jack, you better get her name.
Go.
Yep.
We're up to 33 people so far. That's not bad. And it's only 20 up. So,
That Velda, we're gonna meet, I think Wednesday is our meeting. We meet the last Wednesday of every month.
Last Wednesday of every month. Okay.
And we want to read the 3 students. We take them in the order that they've been published. Last week, we had the 6 Napoleons last month. And this month, we're on the 3 students.
Okay, so is there like a website or something so I can get the information?
Sure. Let me just get the name down there. I have not gotten anything for the announcement for this month's meeting as yet. And they'll send out the quiz to you ahead of time, like an open book exam.
Okay.
Wait,
I remember those.
so is there a way we can get to you, or you want my email?
Well, I can give you my email.
Okay.
Ready?
It might be easier if you put it in the chat.
Okay, chat. Let me see if I can put chat window. Chat. I
Velda,
usually
not to interrupt, did you say you're in Madison, Illinois?
Yeah, Mattison, Matteson.
Oh, yeah, that's almost walking distance. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Do you want my address?
Oh, God.
I am typing my email in the chat.
Someone was talking.
Yes, hi, it's me. Quick question. The invite says bring whiskey. Is gin and tonic okay? It's, you know.
Yeah, that's fine. Anything you want to drink. I have iced tea. I'm a teetotal.
Time I'll bring single malt. No problem.
Oh, and
I have a Bahama Mama.
Oh, Phil.
There we are. Phil got the right stuff.
All right, I'm trying to find a chat. I usually use WebEx Teams, so Zoom is new to me.
Next, if you put your mouse down the bottom of the screen,
okay,
there's going to be participants, polls, and then chat.
I'm not going to keep. Yeah, just continue on. I'll see what I can find.
Okay.
You want me to just give you my address?
Sure.
Oh, so you ready?
Oh, you put it in the chat. Okay. Yeah.
The letter B as in boy.
Okay.
Levitt, Levitt at Comcast.net.
Okay.
I think we're underdressed. I'm looking at Don and Patricia, all dressed up. Is that a bowler hat there? And Pat looks like the queen with that
We
big
thought
hat.
it was supposed to be a Victorian theme, so you know.
Well,
I have on Watson's Derby.
I got you. Okay.
And she has a hat on from the Silver Blades.
There you are. Okay.
What's more Victorian than this?
Nothing.
My underwear.
Except Queen Victoria herself.
It's a Victorian secret.
Yeah, right.
Can I mention an amazing coincidence just before I tuned into the Zoom? We got a call from out of the blue from Lindsay Fay, who we had not spoken with for a couple of years, being out in Arizona. And she was just bringing us up to date about everything. And I just thought I'd pass along Lindsay's good wishes.
Thank you. That's interesting. I had the pleasure of meeting Lindsay Fay when she was in Chicago here she appeared on at the exhibit in, I forgot where it was, Senile Moments, but she was a very charming lady and she did a very nice presentation there. It was under the auspices of Susan Diamond and Ellen Divitt.
Yeah, she did something at the Bensonville Library.
Oh,
as
is
I
that it?
recall.
The
Yes.
Bensonville Library? Okay. Is she permanently in Arizona now?
No, we are permanently in Arizona. She is very rarely there.
I
She
thought she
told us
was a New York lass.
her publisher does not give her enough money to go on a tour to the Poison Pen, which is Phoenix's big mystery bookstore. So she's had to leave that one off her itinerary recent years.
So everybody at Random House too. There are no book tours right now.
Well, maybe COVID had something to do with that also.
Oh, I'm sure COVID had everything to do with it. Yeah. We're trying to figure out if next year there's going to be a gigantic rush on cruises. Like, hey, we're old and we're still here. We want to go on a cruise.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because, and I'll tell you why. I'm very familiar with the travel industry. A good friend of mine is a travel agent, and he's telling me now that all the ships have to equip themselves with some sort of a hospital accommodation for people.
I can see that.
So that's going to take a long time to renovate these ships, and now maybe not, but that's going to be a big project for the ships, and so I don't think there'll be that many ships. The people might be available to take the cruises, but they won't have the ships ready.
I know that there was one, I read that was one boat going out this week.
That's interesting.
Well, one of how many used to go out every week?
Yeah, I understand. I think there are people who are hesitant to go on cruises.
Well,
I would be right now.
There's no question about that.
We'll give it another year, certainly.
The big to do now about the travel industry, I am told, is that most of the places, most of the destinations are not equipped staff-wise to handle the crowds. They don't have waiters, they don't have waitresses, they don't have reservation clerks. So that's the big problem. And we just returned from Door County last week, and every business establishment there was cutting their hours because they did not have enough people to work, say from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. The restaurants, which used to be open all day long, morning, noon, and night, are now open for breakfast and lunch only. Things like that.
And we have that same problem here. Everybody.
Yeah.
there's
We have the same problem in Chicago.
Everything.
We don't have any cabs. We don't have any cabs in Chicago. I mean,
that's
very
another
few.
problem.
Very few.
Oh, my son drives Lyft, so.
Well, we have Lyft and Uber, but the cabs aren't on the street.
I've been corresponding with Mike Keene, the head of the BSI now, and he's planning to have the annual BSI dinner in New York. But I asked him, well, the BSI might be ready for New York, but will New York be ready for us?
Yeah.
He said that they'll do their very best and make sure that if they're not ready, well, we won't be.
Until they're ready.
Oh.
Well, we can't go there until Terry replaces O'Looney's.
Oh, that's right. Hugh died.
We need a new hangout.
Sure do.
Didn't the hotel go back? Where's BSI held? Isn't it the Roosevelt?
Well, they were at both the Roosevelt and the Yale Club. And
the Roosevelt's closed.
The Roosevelt has closed. It's permanently closed. And I understand they're building condominiums there. So the Roosevelt will be out. And so that presents a problem probably in getting around town for the various events, because in the past few years, it's been at the Yale Club and the Roosevelt. The Roosevelt is less than a block away from the Yale Club, so you could walk it. But with the Roosevelt closing now, and the Yale Club, I don't think is able to handle every event at the BSI weekend. We're going to have to find other venues, and that means probably cabs and that sort of thing. It's going to be a big problem. And I was kidding Mike Whalen, who was the previous BSI head, And I was kidding him. I said, you got out at the right time because there are a lot of problems. And Mike Keene is doing a brilliant job, absolutely brilliant in handling things as best he can. But there are so many things that are out of his hands. But as always, the BSI shall survive. And I'm looking forward to the weekend, but it might very well be on Zoom again as it was this past year.
That would be unfortunate.
Barbara Rush, your caption says Adam Drutz. Have you swapped with somebody?
Hey,
Hi,
Barbara.
everybody. I know it says Adam Drutz. I'm at, Donnie and I are at my son's apartment, and he's my techie along with John. So just, that's why it says Adam, but it's really me, Barbara Rush, and Donnie's here as well.
I am not Barbara's husband. I am Michael Pollack. And, the reports of my being Donnie Zalden have been greatly exaggerated.
But there is someone who checked in as Donnie Zalden. Okay.
Michael, why does your name say Donnie Zalden?
I don't know. Perhaps Peggy Purdue can tell me.
No, I can't. I know. All I know is that
there's Donnie.
There's only one Donnie Zalden, and there's only one Michael Pollack.
Easy enough to change.
I'm Donnie Zalden, and there are two of me. I've got an identical twin brother.
Arguably, yes.
Who do you want to be the co-host, Donnie? Who's going to be running the?
Hi, John.
Who's going to be running the slides?
Barbara's gonna advance the slides.
Okay. Just got to make sure.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate you being my backup.
I have to get ready here.
By the way, Jonathan.
Yes, sir.
I think you did a very commendable job this year in getting this thing started and getting it off base, so to speak, because the turnout looks superb, an excellent turnout.
Thank you, sir. I can take no credit for that. It's Brenda and Rudy who publicized this well, and I am just a little novice Zoom user. I wish I had someone like Monica sitting here rather than me.
Well, then congratulations to them as well.
Yes, but thank you.
But don't be too modest.
I see the Zaya family is well represented again, as usual.
Are
we in?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Try to. There we go.
Oh, Susan.
She's from Minneapolis.
Getting ready.
I like your background, Jonathan.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know who created this artwork originally. It's the Torist. It's from the Torist Facebook page.
Ah, very nice.
And I think
might be Al.
Probably Al Shaw.
Yeah.
He's good at that. That looks like some of his stuff.
Yeah, it looks like something from him.
And I spent tons of time preparing PowerPoint pages for the meeting, and I cannot find them on my computer. So you have to just see my pretty face.
That's why I like to write things on the back of envelopes.
So I have pieces of paper.
Where?
I was an errant mouse to probably erase them somewhere. Computer Netherlands.
I got to say, Pat, that's a terrific hat. I love that hat.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
It's very authentic.
I actually did wear it at the Silver Blaze in Saratoga one year, quite a few years back when we went.
I see Sandy Cozine has joined us. Hello, Sandy. How are you?
Fine. I haven't seen you in so long, Donald.
Yes, it's been a while, but I still have.
John's wedding was the last time
When I retired from some sort of canonical activity, I don't remember which one it was anymore, but you wrote me the nicest letter, and I still have it under my pillow.
I'm quite sure the last time I saw you in person was at Evie and John's wedding. That's a long time ago.
Very possible. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Well, you're in Chicago.
Yes.
Is that so bad?
No, it's just so distant.
No, it's the center of the world.
Correct.
Center of the known world.
Thomas Badwolowski has a great background as well. Can you guys see his hat, the hat, and that's his background.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like he's wearing it.
Yeah, if he sits right, he's wearing it.
Yeah. It's very cool. I like it.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. Excellent.
Like that.
Yeah, it's a little too big, but you got the idea.
Very nice.
I'm on this iPad, so you can only get 9 pictures at a time. So I keep sliding back and forth.
Yeah.
I know I should. I wonder if I set up a double screen, if I could see everybody at once. I did. It's one of the bad things. I wish. Rudy, you made it. You weren't sure.
Hey, Rudy, how you
Sorry
doing?
about that. Hello from Phoenix, Arizona. Cheers, everybody.
How cool did it get today?
Oh, 110.
I knew there was a
Nice
reason.
knowing you.
I knew there was
Leave
a
the
reason.
RBO, so we took it, but is it worth 110 degrees? We'll see.
Yeah, but it's a dry heat.
Dry heat as opposed to the
Dry.
mugginess, right?
You bake-
Down here, as
you-
opposed to the mugginess of Chicago.
You bake instead of
live in,
broil.
Yeah, that's
you
right,
make-
Bob.
Yeah,
Make
so
a
do we.
plate.
In Arizona, you bake. In Chicago, you poach.
I know that's right, Dino.
I'm looking.
We have some people from Canada. I know. I noticed that. So it keeps up with our international moniker.
We are.
Yeah. Anyone from the UK?
I don't think so. They'd be respect.
I am working on a couple of my friends from Australia.
What if it's 7:30 here? What time is it in the UK? It's like
They're 6 hours. They're 6 hours ahead.
Yeah, it's
in London.
I don't know that any meeting is worth getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning for.
No. And in Australia, it's last.
Unless it was Arthur Conan Doyle coming back to speak. I mean, that maybe.
Sometimes I'm not going to bed until 2 o'clock.
It's tomorrow. in
John, I didn't
Australia.
think this was a spiritualist meeting.
That's not too bad for a 90-year-old man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I was going to save that for later, Don.
You're the man, Don.
Like me?
We were going to save that
Betcha.
announcement for
You
later.
betcha.
Oh, you're going to say you're making an announcement. It's not worth making an announcement.
Are you kidding?
But it's good to be 90, I'll tell you.
It's
Better
because
than
of
the
you. I'm not the
alternative.
oldest man in the
Well,
room.
it's
That's
better
it.
than the alternative. You got it right there.
As they say, it beats the alternative.
Yeah.
I'm still vertical, and with the help of this idiot stick, I will probably be vertical for a long time. I got some
Good.
good news from our doctor the other day, so
Good.
we're pursuing some new medications, and I think the neuropathy might be on its way out, in which case, so will the idiot stick.
Well,
So
Mazel tov is my
birthday,
IME.
Here's my medication.
Which goes to show you there's still more old drunks than there are old doctors.
Yeah.
Well, you're not alone on the cane brigade, though.
Idiot stick.
Use that one too.
Well, I've got one.
It has its advantages. Good to keep people away.
And keeps me balanced.
Can keep your social distancing.
It's great when you're crossing a busy street, you stop all the traffic. At
Yeah.
least so far it stopped all the traffic.
Well, it's 7 o'clock.
That it is.
Oh, well,
What? Robert?
Okay. Well, it's 7 o'clock and it's the 27th of the month of June, which means that the Torist meeting will be called to order. We finally found a time to meet actually on the 27th. And I want to welcome you all to this meeting and have a few announcements. And then we'll get on to the real business of the meeting. The next meeting first announcement will be September 27th in person at Coletti's Restaurant with a Zoom part as well, assuming that our techs can get that straightened out. They do not consult with me because I don't know anything at all about anything technical. And so the next announcement would be that pursuant to the bylaws and our in-laws and the doings of those who must be obeyed, and on, there has been a change in the leadership of our Science Society, and John Schimberg will be the new chief steward. And I congratulate him, or give him appropriate condolences, whatever the appropriate
My
wish
deepest
is.
sympathies.
And sympathies go with that. Brenda Rossini will remain as the aide de camp, and she has been a great help. Rudy Altagot will be the webmaster, and while he is currently in Arizona, I keep my eye on him out my window because we live
See each other.
literally across the street from one another or across a building from one another and can look at each other's windows. And we have John also assuming the task of being treasurer until we can get that straightened out. Pat Isbin has retired with honors and all the emoluments appertaining thereto. And Pat has done a fabulous job. It's time we have a new energetic leadership and one who knows about the digital age. I want to say thank you to all who caused my position to be allowed. I should say that you allowed me to be in this position. And amongst those, first of all, was Phil Cunningham, who was nice enough to ask me to be the chief steward. And I did accept, and I think I was shocked that I was asked, and I was shocked that I accepted, but I'm certainly glad that I did. It was wonderful. And so I thank you. I thank particularly the members and other Sherlockians who all attend these meetings. I think of course, we all make these meetings what they are. The speakers, well, we've had the best. And I have to say, Canada has supplied us with the best, 3 of the best we've had. And we've had some very, very good speakers in the last 3 years. So they make our get-togethers not only worthwhile, but interesting and informative. So thanks are not enough, but that's all I have for now. You can stay tuned for things later. Also, to Don and Pat Isbin, for all the encouragement and help they have given. As you know, Don is one of our founders, and he is a source of all things Sherlockian, and certainly has been a great help to me, and I'm glad to say a friend. He is indeed the best that there is in the Sherlockian world. Not to mention Pat, who has put up with Don for all these years.
Thank God for Pat.
And also shepherded our exchequer, as such as it is. So thank you, Pat, for all of your efforts. It's been terrific. Let me see what else I have here. Okay. I hope that I leave the Torist better than I found it. We have some new members, and that's important. I also, of course, want to thank Brenda Rossini, the aide de camp, for her advice and counsel, for her help with our progress, and for her indispensable and artistic and literary talent exhibited in our notices of our meetings, which not only was sent out digitally, but I reproduced them and sent them out to many other Sherlockians around the globe, and got back some very interesting notes. So, Sherlockians are really great people, and that's the reason I'm in it. I'm sure many of you as well. So not to blow our own horn too loudly, but we're quite a bunch. And what makes us, I think, so good is that none of us are normal. There's always a little offbeat to everybody in the room, and God bless that. I think that's terrific, and it makes it interesting for all of us. So let's see what else I had. I tried to make some notes here, but it's hard for me to read my own handwriting. And then the last thing I said I had written down here was, and Don stole my thunder, that I was going to incur his wrath by mentioning the fact that we should wish him a happy 90th birthday and many more to come. So to you, Don, happy birthday to you.
Thanks. Thank you.
We got you the same present we got you last year. We'll send it to you in a bigger box.
That's like my retirement pension from
Yeah.
the Tourists.
Yeah, right. You have a retirement pension for the Torist and the birthday present. They'll come in the same parcel. The last thing I want to do before I hand this over to John is just to mention the only Sherlockian event that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there are many more, and there's lots of websites I'm not up to date on, but Denny Dobry is having an open house on August 21st in Reading, Pennsylvania. Denny was nice enough to be a speaker at one of our meetings and show us his reproduction of the digs. And I have to tell you that it's above anything I've ever seen. And I've seen the one in London, of course, the one in San Francisco, and some other attempts. He is really, I think, the star of the show. And if you can make it out there, it's going to be on August 21st in Reading. And I'm not exactly sure where you can go, what the website is, but he is active in the Beacon Society. I don't know, Steve, do you know anything about how to register for that? Or
basically he has just said if people can send him an email and just say that they're coming, and so I'll put his email in the chat.
Okay, good.
Well, Andriaco had it on his website too, so
I do believe so. Believe so.
And I think he had a contact.
Okay. And so with that, I want to thank you all. It's been a great experience, and I really loved it. And I hope we've done a halfway good job. And John, it's all yours. Take it over.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Bravo.
Robert, let me just say this, you're not getting away that easy. I'm going to keep on calling you and bothering you. I'm really honored by this. So much I decided to retire from the practice of law and devote my full time to the head of this society. As of November, that's going to be the case. My wife, who's sitting next to me, has allowed me to do this, and I will be calling on her for her able assistance over the next period of time that I have to the honor of running or assisting in the operation of this society. But I'd like to just simply start our meeting and go to our toasts. Donald, you're first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being first, for letting me be first.
You're always first.
Well, thank you. Before I get into my toast, which is a toast to toasting, I just want to comment about how important the canonical toasts are to our hobby. We are unique, I think, in doing something like toasting. And it has always been a privilege for me to be able to toast. And it should be a privilege for everybody. And when they get the opportunity to make a toast or to give a toast, whichever the right verb is, they should accept it. I know that in my past years as the chief steward, it sometimes was difficult to find somebody to give a toast. They just would outright refuse, and I never liked that because toasting is important. It's unique to our hobby, and it is a pleasure to do it. And with that, I will mention that my toast today is going to be right out of Ed Latwenko's book, which is called Selected Rhyming Canonical Toasts, which is right here. And this is a fantastic book. I provided the rhymes, and Ed Latwenko provided the artwork to illustrate the rhymes. And his work is absolutely commendable and another unique thing about our hobby. For example, on one of the pages where we were commenting on Watson's writings, and I wrote the rhyme, but the outstanding thing there was the artwork. Here is Ed Latwenko's interpretation of Dr. Watson's Sherlockian writings. Can you see that?
A cannon.
It's a cannon. And so that's the kind of initiative and ingenuity that he put forward in this book. It's Ed Latwenko's book. It's available from the Banner Silicone Dispatch Box, which is Compere
George Vanderburg.
Compere George Vanderburg's own publishing firm. And by the way, he had a stroke, and he's doing very well, and he's continuing to operate his publishing firm, but he has retired as a physician and surgeon. Now for my toast, it's very short. A canonical toast is a jolly good show, always leaving Sherlockians much aglow. It can be sedate, flippant, or whatever. It can also be short-lived or forever. So here's to toasting. Hip, hip, hooray, and bravo. To Sherlock Holmes and to Sherlock Holmes
To toasting.
toasting.
Here, here.
Here. There.
I'll drink the drinking.
Terry.
You know.
Coming up, my friend. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I agreed to do this, but I did not agree to have Don Isman lay out toasting to raise a bar to which I doubt that I will come. But at any rate, here we go. So good evening. I've been asked to present the record of a certain Mycroft Holmes, who is the erstwhile brother of a Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Sherlock Holmes is of some reputation and interest among those gathered this evening, and hence the interest in his brother. Mycroft Holmes, 1847, date of death unclear, as I explained below. Place unclear, presumed to be minor country gentry. University unknown, based on ability and intellect, presumed to be a graduate of St. Andrews. Mycroft Holmes, brother by 7 years of the well-known consulting detective Sherlock Holmes. In terms of strict historical record, there are only a few references to the older Holmes in the official records. They are in greater substance reports entitled The Greek Interpreter and the Bruce Partington Plans. Minor mention is made in the final problem and the empty room. The modern scholar will overlook the former English of casual reference to the former reportage of Dr. John Watson, appending The Adventure of to the title of important historical records is simply not done. The first record, The Greek Interpreter. Mycroft Holmes is presented as Sherlock Holmes's older brother, who exceeds Sherlock in powers of mind and observation, but is so indolent that he cannot do formal detective work, and as a result, is presented as a functionary in the English government. The observant student will question how a man who occupies an ordinary position is able to both maintain rooms in Whitehall and be the founder of a gentleman's club. This, of course, is explained in the further records. Mycroft Holmes is described as a much larger and stouter man than Sherlock Holmes, stated to be absolutely corpulent, a massive face, but retaining the Holmesian sharpness of expression. His expression was that of a faraway introspection, which implies constant application of superior intellectual power. His hand is described as resembling the flipper of a seal. The drawing which accompanies the official record shows a man with fleshy face and a double chin, but without the large corporation which adorns the modern, absolutely corpulent individual of today. His flipper-like hands are not shown. I will tell you that I can't say to have shaken hands with a seal, but I have observed them at close quarters. They do not have, or at least I did not observe, any fingers. They do have claws that extend with the paw, which is a rather solid-looking lump. It would seem that Mycroft would have difficulty using a pen. Mycroft and Sherlock Holmes then indulged themselves in a game of one-upmanship regarding the former non-commissioned officer presented to their review in the bow window of the club. This results in the demonstration of Mycroft's superior ability. His indolence is then demonstrated by the introduction of the theme of the report, which I will skip. The Bruce Partington Plan record. Mycroft Holmes is again presented as tall, with the addition of portly, as well as having an uncouth physical inertia. However, his physical presence was such that after the first glance, one forgot the gross body and remembered only the dominant mind. Once again, to our modern eye, the drawing accompanying the official report shows a tall man with a fleshy appearance, but by no means exhibiting uncouth physical inertia or corpulence. Of greater importance for understanding the man, his true occupation is provided as the summoner and collator of worldwide British intelligence. He is at times the British government. His importance and the nature of the relationship with the brothers becomes clearer. Now we understand many of my most important cases came from Mycroft. And now the lesser record. From what we have learned from the foregoing records, the references in the problem and the empty room become clear. Holmes was assisted by Mycroft in leaving England for an extended period to serve the British government in the Great Game. As is well known by everyone attending tonight, modern geopolitical history of the Indian subcontinent demonstrates the importance of Sherlock Holmes, thwarting of Russian ambition in that theater. The invention of James Moriarty was necessary to facilitate Sherlock Holmes' absence from his detective practice. The importance of the subterfuge is reinforced by the fact that Mycroft Holmes himself drove the cab that carried Dr. Watson to the train station for his departure to the continent. This trip was so important that the man who occasionally was the British government drove Dr. Watson's cab and furnished the funds necessary for Sherlock to serve. In closing, Mycroft Holmes has appeared in any number of fictional works based on the records of Dr. Watson. These are often clever and quite interesting. However, It is not our purpose tonight to inflate our understanding of Mycroft Holmes with fictional narrative. The record of Dr. Watson is all that we need or likely will have for the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, I will consider the likely end of the record of Mycroft Holmes. We all understand that Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes can never die, but we have no such assurance regarding Mycroft Holmes. When we consider the recent history of the English government over the last years, we must conclude that Mycroft is truly gone, as his clear and intelligent guidance are clearly, self-evidently missing. Stewards, fill the glasses. Gentlemen, be upstanding. The toast is Mycroft Holmes. He was the British government. Gentlemen,
Here.
Here. Excuse me for a moment. Our doorbell just rang.
Rudy, you're next.
As you wish, my liege. My friends and fellow Sherlockians, I'm most glad to have this opportunity to toast a certain Dr. John H. Watson, late of the Army Medical Department and well known to us for his role as the chronicler of the world's greatest consulting detective. I must say there has already been enough said about Dr. Watson over the last 140 years or so, though our mission is as much to keep his memory green as that of the master. I myself feel a deep sense of admiration for the good doctor, not only as a fellow writer, but also in my being the son of two doctors who met in medical school. I was also introduced to Sherlockiana in the grand game by a certain young Stamford, the investiture name of my friend and brother Terry McCammon, who just gave that wonderful toast, and the name of the man who introduced Watson to Holmes. And though I myself am an amateur, I have an equally deep affinity for military history, going back as far as I can remember, with a great-grandfather who, like Dr. Watson, had been a physician, in his case, in the U.S. Army in World War I. For the mind and pen of Dr. John H. Watson, I, for one, will be eternally grateful. We would indeed be lost without Holmes's Boswell. He has left us the clues needed to continue this grand game of ours and perpetuate this sort of gathering, which enriches our lives through fellowship and intellectual stimulation and keeps us buggering on. My friends, I give you Dr. John H. Watson.
Well, I'm happy to tell you that the doorbell rang. It was Western Union, and I am to read the following. It's a telegram directed to Jonathan Schimber, Chief Steward, Torist International. We've been advised that the torch has passed once again. We want to thank those who came before. Donald Isman and Robert Scharfman have led all of you in keeping us alive. Their leadership has made it possible to study our exploits on an ongoing basis. Without Donald and Robert's efforts, your society might have faded into the mists. While we walk the tour on a daily basis, we keep informed of the continual advancement of the study of our canon. We ask all of you to stand and honor Donald and Robert for their efforts and wish to thank you for all the work that you all do. John H. Watson, MD, and Sherlock Holmes, CD.
Here.
Here, here.
Here. Thank you.
It's now my honor to introduce our speaker. Barbara Rush is Vice Chair of the Friends of the Arthur Conan Doyle Collection at Toronto Public Library, where in 2011, she chaired the conference, Arthur Conan Doyle, A Study in Scandal, SNS. She has presented at numerous Sherlockian conferences, authored and edited articles in Sherlockian and Doylean journals and BSI series books, and written Sherlockian short stories, a novel, play, and pastiche. Barbara is married to fellow bootmaker of Toronto, Donnie Zeldin, with whom she shares 6 children and 15 grandchildren. Listed in Canada's Who Who in 2012, and in furtherance of the tradition of the great detective, he has been gifted an emerald tie pin by Her Majesty Queen Victoria. Barbara was likewise awarded a Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for her contributions to the studies of Sherlockiana, the Holocaust, and ephemera. I introduce Barbara Rush. I'm going to mute everybody but Barbara. I hope.
Yep, here we are. Here we are. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that wonderful introduction. I want to thank Brenda Rossini so much for inviting me and all of you for being here. I'm really thrilled to join you. I'm going to be talking tonight about unmentionables and the Victorians. Adam? Sorry. There we go. There we go. The Victorians. The word conjures up images of repressed sexuality, moral rigidity, and a smug complacency, and has come to represent all those fanatically righteous attitudes which the world has discarded once and for all. It was a time when women were regarded as either angels or seductresses, and the difference straddled a very fine line. In no small measure, their virtue became inextricably linked to their intimate wardrobe, both in the literal and metaphorical sense, the underpinnings of its social construct. We need only peel back the layers of deceptively frilly and apparently innocuous apparel to understand how it came to represent the very foundations upon which Victorian morality hung. While women's lingerie ostensibly serves the purposes of hygiene, warmth, protecting the wearer's modesty, shaping the body, and providing support, its implications are so much broader. Never was this more evident than during the 19th century. Victorian advertising, and especially the colorful imagery printed on the trade cards widely distributed by manufacturers and retailers, are a particularly effective means of conveying the socio-sexual narrative of women's undergarments, reflecting and reinforcing the pernicious precepts of the prevailing popular culture. This talk will be illustrated in part with the aid of ephemera from my collection, included in an exhibit I mounted on the subject some years ago. Like the role of women themselves, their unmentionables, the Victorians being too prudish to even mention the word underwear, saw an evolution throughout the reign of Queen Victoria between 1837 and 1901, when the dawn of a new age was about to begin. From crinolines to corsets, from bloomers to bustles, from petticoats to pantaloons, the changing fashions in personal garb coincided with evolving attitudes towards women and the role they played in society. Form and function were often at odds, an expression of the push and pull of class, gender, social exigencies, and sexual constraints, much of it determined by and subject to the petty tyranny of the prurient male gaze. An examination of what lies beneath would be both instructive and revealing. During the first decades of the century, women's clothing was loose and worn fairly close to the body. But as Victoria's crown was placed upon her little head and the heavy robes of state were lowered onto her narrow shoulders for the first time, women were becoming enveloped in multiple layers of flannel, cotton, and lace. Their concealed petticoats reflective of the outward indicators of wealth and material success, which translated quite literally into extraneous material, up to 15 yards of it in circumference and quite as many pounds in weight, stuffed beneath enormously wide skirts. Swathed in yards of suffocating fabric, women were for all intents and purposes mummified. Though the layers of petticoats were more fashionable than the bandages of the ancient Egyptians, those they enshrouded were equally entombed. A description of 1857 reads, "The underclothing of a lady of fashion consists of long drawers trimmed with lace, a flannel petticoat, an under petticoat 3.5 yards wide, a petticoat wadded to the knees and stiffened on the upper part with whalebones inserted a hand's breadth from one another, a white starched petticoat with 3 stiffly starched flounces, 2 muslin petticoats, and finally, the dress. In addition to dragging up filth from the street, they were liable to be trampled on and awkward to move around in while negotiating small rooms. They also posed a significant threat to the bric-a-brac which adorned the occasional tables in Victorian front parlors. Enter the crinoline. Considerably less cumbersome and heavy, though hardly taking up any less real estate. In fact, it widened the circumference of a woman's body by another few yards, encasing her in a virtual bubble of fabric. According to one contemporary fashion maven, the crinoline consisted of a light metal or whalebone structure in which hoops were placed horizontally, one above the other, and held together by curved ribs, or by way of a complicated series of metal hinges. There are records of rubber tubes being used to form a bell-like framework, inflated by means of a bellows and deflated to enable the wearer to sit down. Presumably one had to carry the bellows about in order to re-inflate the apparatus when the lady stood up. Though no doubt an engineering marvel, it did little to alter the fashion trend of the tiny waist set atop of ballooning skirts. Essentially, the crinoline served as a gilded cage, while the woman, like some exotic, fluttery bird, was held captive within. And the consequences could be disastrous, if not tragic. Crinolines posed a very real danger to those who approached too near the fireplace, only to have all those layers of fabric go up in flames along with the lady enveloped within them. Just such a tragedy occurred to 2 half-sisters of Oscar Wilde, of particular interest to Sherlockians for his dinner at the Langham Hotel in 1889 with J.M. Stoddard of Lippincott's Monthly Magazine and Arthur Conan Doyle, from which emerged the picture of Dorian Gray and the Sign of the Four. The sisters' crinolines caught fire at an Irish ball in 1871, costing both of them their lives. 10 years earlier in Massachusetts, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's wife, Frances Appleton, perished in much the same fashion, on account of fashion. And yet, there was method to the madness, safeguarding a woman's virtue by keeping her limbs, not her legs, considered too provocative a descriptor, concealed, and men, along with their evil thoughts, at bay, serving a similar function as the chastity belt of centuries earlier, as a means of securing property that belonged to the husband alone. Nevertheless, the crinoline was hailed as an immense improvement over the bulky and heavy layers of the petticoat for its lightness and the comparative freedom of movement it afforded. Though Queen Victoria admired the fashion device, said to have been introduced to England on a visit by the Princess Eugenie in April 1855, it had its detractors, and a number of right-minded women, including Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp, balked at its implementation, which was entirely antithetical to her position on the role of women. Refusing to live her life in a cage, however gilded it might be, she wrote, "A family uses people not for what they are, nor for what they are intended to be, but for what it wants them for, its own uses. If it wants someone to sit in the drawing room, that someone is supplied by the family, though she may be destined for science, or for education, or for active superintendence by God, that is, by the gifts within." Neither donning the crinoline nor sitting in a drawing room were viable options for the heroine of the Crimean War, and she flatly rejected both. Nevertheless, inconvenience continued unabated as the new contraption gained momentum, becoming quite as unmanageable as the petticoat of previous decades. Maneuvering through narrow doorways could be something of a challenge, while a ride on an omnibus could occasion disastrous, if comical, effects. The satirical magazine Punch suggested somewhat facetiously that crinolines ought to be removed and hung on the exterior of the vehicle. While servants did wear a modified version of the crinoline, the expansive skirt was very much indicative of the class, wealth, and status of the wearer. In both the United States and England, essentially, the greater the circumference, the higher a lady's rung on the social ladder. But perhaps no other article of intimate apparel came to define the female form divine and the role of women who wore it more than the corset. If the hooped cage that was the crinoline was a step up from the mummy's bandages of the petticoat, the corset, with its tight laces and vertical stays reinforced with whalebone and steel, was nothing short of an ambulatory prison cell. Though manufacturers emphasized the comfort, convenience, and improving qualities of its garments, in fact, the corset was referred to euphemistically as the garment, for the purposes of supporting organs, improving posture, and aiding in hygiene, they were as uncomfortable and inconvenient as may be imagined, if not downright dangerous. A stifling and debilitating form of body armor, women found themselves clad within its constraints, not for their own protection, but on account of the insecurities and fears of the fragile male ego, their lives as proscribed and circumscribed as their waistlines. In an age when children were regarded as miniature adults, little girls as young as 6 or 7 were subjected to the tortures of the decorative straitjacket endured by their mothers, justified incredibly by its salutary effects. The notion being that if they were fitted out while they were still growing, it would be less painful by the time they were fully grown. The result was that the corset gained steadily in popularity after the Great Exhibition of 1851, where over 30 displays of various designs could be viewed. Far from being a healthful item of a woman's wardrobe or a mere slimming article of apparel, within its stays and laces lurked an entire socio-sexual phenomenon. Like other restricted Victorian clothing, it mirrored the repressive and inflexible society which promoted it. What was the rationale behind the pushing, padding, and compressing of a woman's body? Firstly, for the aspirational aristocrat, the corset was, like the crinoline, a guise of wealth, since it made bending, stooping, and picking up extremely difficult. It suggested that those who wore it had servants employed for this function, who themselves rarely indulged in such frivolous impediments. Further, it accentuated those areas of the woman's body which differentiated it from a man's. With the bosom raised up, the waist cinched, and along with the bustle that derriere emphasized, the result was the delineation of the hourglass figure, essentially creating a caricature of the female form with an enlarged bosom and pelvis, delivering a subliminal message as to a woman's fecundity and suitability for childbearing. The bustle was in itself a kind of extension of the corset. According to legend, around 1870, the great couturier, Charles Worth, saw a servant scrubbing down the steps outside her master's house, who had hitched up the back of her dress, bunching it up and tucking it into her waistband. He found the result enchanting. A voila, the latest fashion craze, or rather craziness, was born. The bustle consisted of a kind of padded steel cage projecting out of the rear of the dress. Early on in its evolution, extending down to the back of the knees, by the 1880s, this unsightly protuberance resembled nothing so much as an extended shelf upon which it was said a tea tray could safely be balanced. At the time of the celebration of Queen Victoria's 50th year on the throne in 1887, a Golden Jubilee musical bustle worn by British subjects in India played God Save the Queen whenever the wearer sat down. Given that one must stand during the playing of the national anthem, the wearer of the Jubilee bustle must have been constantly popping up and down. Long before celebrity endorsements, actress Lily Langtry, most likely the model for Irene Adler, lent her name to an eponymous bustle described as an arrangement of metal bands working on a pivot, citing its beneficial improvements and user-friendly attributes. Known as the Jersey Lily, she also kickstarted the fashion for the woven fabric and underclothes, which came to be known as jersey. But there was an ironic moral contradiction inherent in the wearing of the corset and bustle. In the 19th century, women were regarded as either goddesses or whores. To be tight-laced was to be respectable. To be unlaced was to be literally a loose woman, the original meaning of the phrase. Those who endured its agonies and subjected themselves to its indignities were admired, even worshipped. Contemporary advertising consistently depicted angels and cherubs alongside women in corsets, while those who chose to ignore its precepts were knocked off their pedestal and cast out from the acceptable social order into a social wilderness. And there was no middle ground. The corset became the determining factor and ultimate manifestation of respectability, the literal and metaphorical upholder of middle-class values. But because it so graphically delineated the lines of the body, it was also sexually provocative, ironically infusing a decidedly erotic, even salacious element into its use. The breasts were raised up over the top of the bodice, especially in evening clothes, and with any heavy breathing, given that breathing was possible at all, would visibly heave up and down. Little wonder that women in love were thought to be so attractive. The ardor of which poets wrote with such reverence was more a result of the undulating bosom than of palpitating hearts. Naturally, the Victorian male, who had a more pronounced predilection for the corset than its victims, had little sympathy for the suffering they endured. In a letter written to the Englishwoman's Domestic Magazine, a man representative of his time offered the following sadistic assessment. There is something extraordinarily fascinating in the thought that a young girl has for many years been subjected to the strictest disciplines of the corset. If she has suffered, as I have no doubt she has, great pain from their extreme pressure, it must be quite made up to her by the admiration her figure excites. The message on one particular trade card says it all. Woman has no higher mission than to be beautiful. But not unlike today, it was the kind of beauty which can never be fully attained, undoubtedly leaving many young women feeling inadequate and unworthy. Discipline was a word often associated with the corset. The implication was that mortification of the flesh, somewhat akin to a hair shirt, was somehow grist for the soul and helped contain an overzealous personality. And what mattered a woman's comfort and health when measured against her spiritual salvation? Well, the price paid for spiritual salvation and the demands of haute couture was nothing short of catastrophic. The tightly laced undergarments impeded respiration, misaligned the spine and ribs, and pressed in mercilessly on stomachs, displacing livers and other delicate organs. Some women, already strapped in, bound up, and locked down, went to even greater lengths to achieve the wasp waist effect by having their lower ribs cracked or surgically removed. The result of all this physical abuse was popularly referred to as female complaints, specifically fallen wombs, leukorrhea, painful menstruation, and prolapsed uterus. Remedies for the consequences of the dictates of Victorian fashion once again recall the crudeness and brutality of the Middle Ages. Consider, for example, various treatments for prolapsed uterus, sponges forced into the vagina, injections of alum and water, the application of ferritic electricity, which was thought to strengthen the abdominal wall, tonics, whose main ingredient was alcohol or laudanum, effectively turning women into alcoholics and drug addicts, enemas, hip baths, and pessaries. The pessary was an instrument of torture which provided more discomfort and potential dangers than did the corset, the horrors of which it was created to combat. Constructed of metal, wood, or bone, it was inserted into the vagina for the purpose of supporting the uterus and female organs, which the corset had so effectively damaged. And since we're getting kind of gross here, these cards for dress shields spoke to the need to protect gowns and undergarments from dirt and perspiration in the days before deodorant and antiperspirant. One Victorian gown in my own collection still bears stains and a musty odor after nearly a century and a half. These breast cups made of glass were intended to catch seeping milk from lactating mothers, thus preventing unsightly second stains from soiling one's gown, though they don't look terribly comfortable. But then, in many ways, the Victorian age was built for endurance rather than comfort, most especially for women. Just as the corset encased the bodies of its victims, the dispute over its merits and dangers encapsulated Victorian attitudes towards gender, class, and sexuality, and were pivotal to an understanding of a period defined by a set of rigid, unyielding, and immobilizing precepts dictated by the exigencies of the cult of female beauty. Essentially, the shape society adopted was determined by what lay beneath, amounting to the enslavement of women, their bodies codified, objectified, and sexualized, their lives demoralized and degraded. In an age when they were beginning to assert their rights with regards to education, marriage, children, divorce, property, careers, and the elective franchise, women, shackled and incarcerated, were treated as though they had committed a felony and sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. And yet another irony, though it was men who dressed them up like porcelain dolls, women were nevertheless perceived as vain, simple-minded, or seductresses. Sadly, even Sherlock Holmes, champion of justice that he is unable to rise above the prevailing ethos of his day. Women are never to be entirely trusted, he maintains, not the best of them, basing his dubious observations on the somewhat contemptuous rationale. How can you build on such a quicksand? Their most trivial action may mean volumes, or their most extraordinary conduct may depend upon a hairpin or a curling tongs. Despite its obvious dangers and discomforts, the corset was believed to be an integral part of a woman's wardrobe. The corset will live, wrote one enthusiast, male of course, as long as the innate desire to please lives in women's hearts. They have tried in vain to combat it. Vain efforts Useless furies. The corset, more powerful than its enemies, has not ceased for a single instant from making proselytes. One can destroy a religion, overthrow a government. Against the corset, one can do nothing. Hail then, O corset, intimate and mysterious garment that increases the charm of women. Hail, O corset, you are blessed by all women, and may your name be glorified all over the earth. Well, though it may well have been as exacting as a religion and as regulatory as a government, the corset was hardly regarded as a blessing by all women. Regarded as a physical distortion of the female form, the practice was condemned by doctors, as well as by the rational dress movement. Everyone knew where Orson Fowler stood on the issue when he wrote a book in 1846 entitled, and this is the title, Tight Lacing, Founded on Physiology and Phrenology, or the evils inflicted on the mind and body by compressing the organs of animal life, thereby retarding and enfeebling the vital functions. Quite a title. Actress Sarah Bernhardt, who eschewed the corset, enjoyed her own inimitable style, while the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood painted women in loosely fitting robes and flowing gowns. Other champions of sensible dress included Amelia Bloomer, fierce advocate of women's rights and the elective franchise, who popularized the article of apparel which bore her name, though it was actually created by Elizabeth Smith Miller, who in 1851 wore it on a visit to Seneca Falls, New York. Perhaps not coincidentally, the venue for the Women's Rights Convention held there 3 years earlier. Bloomer instantly recognized its potential to free women from the constraints and folly of conventional fashion. Though hardly a radical concept by today's standards, it was ridiculed as immodest and hideous. Men especially reviled the Bloomers with their flaring skirts reaching below the knees, under which baggy Turkish-style pantaloons extended to the ankle, as an attempt by women to wear the trousers in the family. Once again, common sense was outweighed by the fragility of the male ego. Lending some credence to that theory is Irene Adler, who donned men's clothing with the objective of outwitting the great detective himself. Nevertheless, bloomers quickly lost momentum until nearly half a century later, when the vogue for riding bicycles took off and the odd-looking fashion trend was resurrected. Acclaimed for the ability to liberate women from the constraints and dangers of long, trailing skirts, allowing them the freedom to travel on 2 wheels, far from the prying eyes of parents and chaperones. Once again, bloomers were denigrated by some late Victorian men whose insecurities and fears of having their domestic dominance usurped precluded their total acceptance. If the majority of Victorian women's lingerie, a word which, by the way, was popularized by the turn of the century, was narrow and constricting, the chemise, by contrast, was anything but. A shift or smock intended for wear over the drawers, it protected the skin from the corset and the corset from the dirt and perspiration of the skin. Voluminous and amorphous, yards of fabric were trimmed or embroidered at wide necklines and hems, distinguishing it from nightdresses, which generally boasted yokes, collars, and cuffs. And here is Queen Victoria's chemise, presumably worn during the waning years of her life, when her circumference exceeded her height, which was just under 5 feet. Drawers, known later in the century as knickers, were, like the chemise which covered them, enormous in size, consisting of 2 almost totally separate and open sections, one for each leg, joined and fastened by a waistband. Presumably, this large gap is for the purpose of answering the call of nature beneath the stifling layers of chemise, corset, bustle, and gown. A pair of Queen Victoria's knickers sold at auction in 1977 were described in a newspaper report as resembling two great linen slings gaping open at the front and held together by a drawstring. This effectively describes the pair I purchased at a British auction some 10 years ago. It seems Her Majesty had her cipher and a number embroidered on every article of her wardrobe. The chemise and the knickers, made of fine white linen, both carry that identifying emblem. After purchasing them, I learned that there had been an organized effort launched in England to prevent them from emigrating to Canada. Donnie and I had sent them to our daughter in London to calm the fury of those who felt that a national treasure was being forever lost. At the time of purchase, news of the sale hit media around the world, and I was answering calls and conducting interviews from as far afield as India. And finally, I offer you a glimpse of majestic limb, at least in the form of a pair of Victoria's pale pink stockings. Also bearing her cipher, they are woven of pure silk. Those stockings were ordinarily made of wool, cotton, or flannel. Through 60 years of her long reign, a man named John Meakin wove all of her hosiery, on which a woman by the name of Anne Birkin embroidered every design. I was fortunate to have made contact with Meakin's great-great-grandson, Jeff. We know the Queen must have worn this particular pair from my collection fairly early in her reign, as following the death of her beloved Prince Albert in 1861, she wore nothing but black stockings. Near the beginning of the century, stockings were held aloft with garters encircling the calf, later to be replaced by a garter belt from which suspenders hooked the tops of the stockings in place. This practice continued well into the 20th century. I can well remember wearing such belts until pantyhose were popularized in the 1970s. And one further surprise. In 2012, Donnie and I took a trip to England, where we boarded a ship commemorating the centennial of the voyage of the Titanic. While on the way to Southampton, we were invited to stop in for a visit with Catherine Beggs Doyle, the author's great-grandniece, and family at their home near the New Forest. I experienced a shivery thrill as I leafed through family photo albums of Conan Doyle pulling his children around in a cart, and pictures of the man seated beside a bookcase which now graced the bedroom we were occupying, evidence of the ordinary things that offered context to the life of this extraordinary man. But nothing could have prepared us for the most unexpected undergarment adventure of all. Some months prior to our visit, Donnie and I had purchased at auction a box filled with unlikely treasure, the contents of Lady Conan Doyle's underwear drawer, gathered together and disposed of, in all probability, when Windlesham was sold in 1955. The cardboard box, though nowhere near as sinister as the one Sherlock Holmes examined, if nearly as bizarre, marked Windlesham Crowborough, contained, no, not a pair of mismatched ears, but personal articles of clothing belonging to Lady Conan Doyle, ranging from delicate pantalettes and bed jackets to silk nightgowns, some of them identified with a name tag reading Conan Doyle. While in London visiting our daughter, we had picked up the box, so it was in our possession on our arrival in Leamington. Catherine Beggs Doyle had mentioned to me that amongst the family heirlooms, which included Conan Doyle's hairbrushes, she also had one of his nightshirts. It was thrilling to hold such an intimate item of apparel in my hands and put me in mind of a bit of a prank. Excusing ourselves to our bedroom with Conan Doyle's nightshirt, Donnie and I laid it carefully on the bed in a romantic embrace with one of Lady Conan Doyle's negligees. I admit it was a bit creepy and no doubt slightly irreverent, but touching at the same time. Arthur and Jean, surrounded by the familiar objects of their home, together again. When we brought Catherine and her husband Michael into the room, they were equally astounded. And then came the real shocker. A closer examination revealed sequential laundry tags sewn into the seams of both garments. Conan Doyle's bearing number 167, Jean's number 168. There could be no further doubt as to the authenticity or the provenance of the contents of the cardboard box. As we waved goodbye to the Doyles, we left behind one of the nightgowns, both in appreciation for their immense hospitality and to mark the reunion of the very personal possessions of the man who has left the world so much richer for the valuable legacy he has bequeathed us. Not surprisingly, there's not a single mention of the knickers of a certain gracious lady in any of the Sherlock Holmes tales. The only intimate article of apparel I could reference in the entire canon is a man's nightshirt worn by Sutton, alias Mr. Blessington of the Worthington Bank Gang and the Resident Patient, hanging murdered from a hook on the ceiling. The Stoner sisters were in night dresses as well, when their wicked stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott, set the deadly viper upon them in the middle of the night. The lesson to be learned here is that it is fatal, or at least dangerous in the extreme, to appear in a Sherlock Holmes tale dressed only in night clothes, with the possible exception of the detective himself, who appears to be quite comfortably and casually attired at 221B in his mouse-colored dressing gown. Now that Victoria's secrets and those of the women of the age to which she lent her name have been exposed, it's clear that Sherlock Holmes is not the only one who is able to shed light on the darkness. What lies beneath has been laid bare. The unmentionables have been mentioned, and what was once concealed has at last been revealed. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful, bravo, wonderful.
Barbara, may I ask you a question?
A personal question, Michael?
No, nothing like that. This is an anecdote.
Okay.
I want to ask your opinion as to whether you have heard it and whether it is true.
Okay.
The story is that Queen Victoria was sitting by the fire when a spark lighted her dress, and a servant girl went out and saved Victoria from being badly burned by patting out the fire, and the servant girl was promptly dismissed for touching the Queen.
Michael, I have never, ever heard that story.
Okay, good.
I've read a lot of biographies of Queen Victoria. I've never heard that story. I hope that it's untrue. Very much
Thank
hope
you.
it's untrue.
I will assume so.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? It was absolutely brilliant, Barbara. It really was wonderful.
Oh,
I
thank you so much, John. Thank you.
introduced my question by saying that. Barbara, it was brilliant, well-researched, and just wonderful.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you all for inviting me and for your attention. It was really wonderful to be here amongst you.
While looking at the pictures, I scribbled down a toast in honor of this thing. And I beg your indulgence for a moment. Boxers or briefs? Which did our masters wear? The doctor, I think, would seek relief, needing some freedom down there. But Sherlock, being so uptight, would choose something very tight and very white. But this is just a little ditty to presume about our dear friends who are fruits of the loom.
Dino, you're a nut.
Raise your glass to the undergarments of the doctor.
You're terrific.
And Sherlock's.
You're a treasure.
Oh,
You're
Dino.
a treasure.
Oh, wonderful.
I love that, Gina. Love it.
Does anyone want to make any announcements as to any meetings of any other organizations that people might be interested in, Zoom or live? Guess not. In that case, our next meeting is in 3 months, and it's not on a Jewish holiday. It's been a problem in the past. The speaker will be Diane Gilbert Madsen, who will speak on villainouses and Sherlock Holmes. I'm going to take executive privilege and ask anyone who might be interested that our membership is $30. With that, you get a beautiful pin. And if you want to become a member, and there's no other yearly dues, if you want to become a member of Torist International, please contact me and I'll tell you where to send the check. And I will find out where I can send the pin. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for attending and see you in 3 months, I hope.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Well done.
Thank you, Barbara. Well done.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Wait, we have 221B.
This is Diane to Barbara. I haven't really investigated the women's underclothes for the villainesses, but I'll do so for the September meeting and see if I can find any references. Great talk.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
And we end, as we do always at every meeting, with 221B.
Here dwell together still two men of note, who never lived and so can never die. How very near they seem, yet how remote, that age before the world went all awry. But still the game's afoot for those with ears, attuned to catch the distant view. Halloo! England is England, yet for all our fears, only those things the heart believes are true. A yellow fog swirls past the window pane as night descends upon this fabled street. A lonely hansom splashes through the rain. The ghostly gas lamps fail at 20 feet. Here, though the world explode, these two survive. And it was always 1895.
Good evening.
Good evening. Wonderful. Thank you.
Evening, and
Good
thank you
evening.
very, very much.
Barbara,
Yes.
before you go, were you
Yes,
aware
Bill.
that a pair of Queen Victoria's slippers sold in May in the UK?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I noticed it in one of the antiques magazines that we subscribe to. It was sold at John Bellman's. It's described as Queen Victoria's cream, satin, and gold thread ballet style slippers, circa 1840s to 1850s.
Yeah, I saw a pair like that. It's possibly a pair that I passed on because it didn't have very good provenance.
Does it give a price?
I'm just looking to see if it had any provenance. Yes, the estimate was £2,000 to £3,000, and it sold for 1,500.
Oh, interesting.
Wait a second.
Queen Victoria's slippers, which bears the label.
I have a pair of little shoes that belong to one of her children.
Here it is, gifted by
Yeah,
Queen Victoria.
it's the provenance says gifted by Queen Victoria to her mistress of the robes, Harriet Sutherland Levison Gower, Duchess of Sutherland, thence by descent to the Chaplin family via her granddaughter, Lady Florence Sutherland Levison Gower, who married Henry Chaplin, first Viscount Chaplin. Doesn't mean much to me, but maybe it does to you.
Well, that's wonderful. You know, Queen Victoria gave away a lot of things like her underwear. And that's why so much of it actually has appeared on, at public auction, because she would give away articles of her clothing, including her underwear. So as gifts. I also have a wonderful swatch of a gown that she wore that she gave to one of her ladies in waiting.
Cool.
Mhm.
Here's a little thought you might want to mull. Barbara, in her opening on the email, talked about Sherlock Holmes quoting that section where they fly. He wants them to fly out the window and peer into the houses as they go along.
Yeah, Brenda wrote that
Yeah.
in the introduction. Yeah.
His buddy, J.M. Barrie, 10 years later, has Peter Pan flying out the window with Wendy. And if you know of the relationship that I have written about, it's interesting that these guys keep back and forth, giving each other little shout outs.
Mm-hmm. They wrote a play together that they tried
Yeah, there
to
was
present. It
Big
was
failure.
it was a big flop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote about that too. That's,
Harry Doyle
that's the
play.
reason. That's the reason that I think the Arcadian mixture was used in the Sherlock Holmes story.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's in the BSI, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
check it out.
Okay.
Great job, Barbara.
It was wonderful, Barbara. It
That
really
was
was.
wonderful. That was
Thank
just
you very
wonderful.
much, all of you. Jonathan, thank you again. Brenda, thank you very much for having me. Bob, it sounds like you've done a wonderful job all these years.
Oh, we tried.
Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you all for joining me.
And thanks to the tourists for inviting us all.
You're certainly welcome.
More than welcome. More than welcome.
Thank you so much for letting us come for a lovely evening.
Bye, everyone.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
See you on.
Get to wear a tie.
Thank you.
Go. One of the few times I get to wear a tie. We're down to 10 people. Five. Robert, I'll be talking to you.
Okay. Doc, good to see you.
Donnie, thank you.
All right.